Welcome. So with today, we want to do something slightly different. Somewhere we're gonna try and mix it up. There's some things we want to talk about separately from that's something I kind of talk about and also we have some upcoming things we're planning and do. And basically there's some discussion we want to have by watching some other channel that I'm interested in and some other discussion. I wanted to, watch some of those videos and basically share my thoughts on it. Okay, and then today I have one phone. I'm letting you know me's a man, he's a controversial figure, I guess there's some, but me do, Joe Rogan is one of my, I would say, top podcasts I do listen to. I mean, especially I have like interesting people on where, if you know me, and I know if you listen to some of the episode previously, I say I'm a man who enjoy scientific discussion. You don't have to be about astronomy, about quantum physics, biology, creation, all of them things they so them things they interest me. So like when I have people like that on, those are like my favorite type of podcasts I do listen to. But with that said, I do consume a lot of him episode in podcast, but I think I always say there's some people who come on the podcast where like you always I wonder like, there's this thing called what them call him agent, provocateur. Those are people like, they will you will see them in public, they will on news media, they will on podcasts, they will even on the Senate, the government, and basically these people like them come out and them kind of leak little information to kind of corrupt the mind or corrupt the truth. Like them give you a little bit of truth. They talk about certain stuff where it's like you don't know what to believe. You understand what I'm saying? And then like so sometimes do have some guess on it, and I always question it like just based on them answer, them always come out not just deceptive, but it's like them answer a little bit with the truth, and but it's like you don't really know because they may be out there trying. What I call it now? Misinform or misinformation or what to the public. So with that said, you have this guy I follow, this channel of follow it's called Moon, and them actually did a composite. It's so crazy that I'm saying social media they might listen to you because through stuff like that I'm listening to for some reason. So this recommended to me and I start going like a rabbit hole about it, right? So let me pull it up here and I can watch it and I'm gonna share some thoughts on it. See how this work. Yes. Boom. All right. So let's start.
Joe Rogan has had thousands of episodes posted, and for the most part, they're all just fairly normal and interesting. But occasionally, somebody will go on the podcast
That
with a
guy
hidden
was
agenda,
crazy. I listened to that
using his
episode.
platform with ulterior motives. Or there's just something else going on, a hidden narrative that shows a guest and their views are compromised in some way.
You have the director of the FBI on the show saying there's no if there was nothing you're looking for on those tapes. Like what?
Sometimes it's really obvious, and you can
with the FBI, name Patel, FBI director. I couldn't even fully listen to that episode fully because it was just so obvious that this man was just lying, and to the point where just uncomfortable. And Joe did challenge him a little, but he's like he's the FBI director. You have to play it cool. You have to play it safe. But for people that know, Patel is like the FBI director. Him got into, and I guess they might go in some of it here. Him basically got fame before joining the Trump administration, champion the Epstein file, right? Yeah, they need to release it, they need to do this, they need to do that. And when him get into power, and he actually have the power to release certain stuff, might basically said nothing's there. So I'm going to talk about that a little here.
And see Joe tweak onto this. Sometimes you have to be paying attention to really sense this out, and other times it takes real digging to understand what's going on behind the conversation.
Would your wife know your ATM PIN code? No?
No.
Is that your ATM PIN code?
Yeah.
I didn't watch that one.
That's weird.
Like we saw with the Paul Stamets episode. Now, Paul Stamets is a great guy. He's one of the leading mycologists, generating a whole new wave of interest in nature and specifically mushrooms and mycology. He's written books, runs a successful company, sells supplements, and has worked with government biodefense programs since 9/11. Paul has been a regular on the podcast, but when he joined Joe Rogan for a second time, we got one of the podcast's most mysterious moments. But there were more dimensions to it than most people realized. Deep into a conversation that touched virtually every aspect of mushrooms and fungi, Joe casually mentioned portobello mushrooms, and suddenly Stamets' entire demeanor changes after he explains that portobellos have a problem. Joe was completely caught off guard here.
What are the negative benefit or the negative effects of this?
This is an explosive area of conversation, and that puts my life in danger. So I reserve the right not to answer your question.
Whoa.
Wow.
I didn't expect that.
That sounds crazy, right? This man basically, as I'm talk about work on mushroom, be a different scientific study and all of that stuff. But if you don't know what that type of mushroom is, it's typical what most people eat. Like, when you eat vegetable, all of that stuff is, that type of mushroom is like basically one of the most consumed type of mushroom where people can consume. You know what I mean? So, you get a vegetable. I eat them sauteed mushroom, but yeah.
It puts your life in danger talking about portobello mushrooms?
But what was this strange reaction actually about? As Stamets clearly hints that portobello mushrooms are not as healthy as many think, especially if you don't cook them at high enough heat. The leading theory is that portobellos contain compounds called agarotines, which can convert to potentially carcinogenic substances. Interestingly, in his most recent Joe Rogan appearance, Joe never brought up this infamous moment again, one of the most talked about exchanges in the show's history. In fact, portobellos aren't even mentioned once in the entire conversation. But why? If it's just that it can lead to cancer, wouldn't this be good for the public to know about? Well, we have to dig a little further. You see, Paul Stamets is on record discussing portobello's dangers. Back in 2006, he had previously stated that eating raw portobellos was analogous to smoking, but worse.
It's a unique chemical that's in button mushrooms and portobellos. They're very much analogous to smoking a cigarette, except the agarotines cause tumors all over your body as opposed to just in your lungs.
Now, you've got to admit that.
Yeah, that's crazy because I guess I never stop eating mushroom because I do love mushrooms.
The magnitude of the original reaction itself comes across as surprising. Wasn't it just as simple as saying they're dangerous if you don't cook them properly and move on? Well, in hindsight, it seems like Stamets might have swerved the topic as he didn't want to harm the $50 billion global market, over which he has a major influence. Some even joked about the Portobello Mafia, which sounds absurd, though organized crime groups have allegedly controlled mushroom production for decades, especially in the state of Pennsylvania, where over half of US mushrooms are grown. But there seems to be a deeper and darker layer to Stamets' shocking reaction that most theories are missing. You see, it turned out that he was once close friends with Stephen Hayden Pollock, who was also a notable mycologist that was murdered in 1981 under highly suspicious circumstances. Pollock was running illegal prescription operations to fund his mushroom research when someone shot him in the head during what appeared to be a robbery. Detective work found solid evidence pointing to 3 suspects, but the district attorney refused to prosecute for unknown reasons, and all 3 suspects died as free men. But the case gets even stranger. There's allegedly a recording that captured police officers discussing their own involvement in Pollock's murder. A drifter had stolen a tape recorder from an unmarked police car and traded it for wine at a liquor store. When the owner played it back, he heard what sounded like a cop and a burglar talking about killing the mushroom doctor. But the tape sat hidden in someone's toolbox for 30 years because they were terrified the corrupt cops would track them down and kill them too. When a journalist tried to investigate in 2013, the DEA claimed they had destroyed all the files. And this wasn't Stamets' only brush with dangerous research circles. In his latest podcast, he revealed that back in the 1970s...
if you watch this, I might say, oh, they sound ridiculous, right? But if you ever look in just the history of corporation throughout the globe, they will do whatever it takes to protect the bottom line. So this, it might seem absurd, mushroom, but yeah, it's a $50 billion plus industry. So, and this guy, like I said, I them explain more about this huge influence over it. So if you come out public and say this type of mushroom is dangerous, it will affect their market. Like I said, I'm a person that consume mushroom, so then, I cook, mushroom, saute mushroom, all of that stuff I like. But so this might influence somebody like me not to mess with it again. You get what I'm saying? So you might think it's absurd, but one thing you have learned about history, not just American history, just history in general, when it comes to money, every business will do whatever it takes to protect the bottom line. And then if like I say, if a Sata type of shady character run that industry, you can't expect nothing but something like this to happen. So, and him work for the government, so he might know things that we don't know, right? So it sounds crazy, but yeah.
He was organizing secret underground conferences with the world's leading psychedelic researchers: Albert Hoffman, Gordon Wasson, Terence McKenna, and Richard Evans Schultz.
I was the only one that had a DEA license, so we did these conferences, collecting all these experts together with Albert Hoffman there, or Gordon Wasson, Richard Evans Schultz, Jonathan Ott, Terence McKenna. But I had the license to be able to possess psilocybin with my professor. And so we would have all the psilocybin. So we did these educational events, academic with citizen scientists and psychonauts coming together. What's really different is we just had the Psychedelic Science MAPS conference in Denver, 8,500 people. Back in the 1970s, at any moment, we were afraid that a SWAT team would break down the doors and arrest everybody.
He was the only one with a DEA license, making him a central figure bringing together the most controversial scientists of the era. And they were operating in a high state of paranoia because at any moment they were afraid a SWAT team would break down the doors and arrest everybody. So when Stamets says that discussing some mushrooms could put his life in danger, maybe he's not exaggerating. He's seen what happens with inside the government. He's at the top of the government research with mushrooms. And he's also seen one of his top mycologist friends get murdered, and then the entire case getting buried away, whether by organized criminals or someone else. And by organizing secret meetings with controversial researchers and dodging the law, he's probably still deeply paranoid about certain mushrooms. But whatever the truth is, it made for some awkward but interesting viewing. But that same thing can't be said for everyone. Like in June 2025, with FBI Director Kash Patel appearing on Joe Rogan and spending nearly 20 minutes explaining why everyone should just accept the official Epstein story.
So him to me is one of the worst in the sense that this man made a name like in the podcast world, talking about Jeffrey Epstein, right? Releasing the file, talk about all the abuse, talk about everybody in the list. Like this was Kash Patel, fame in that sense, that on the public side, right? And then they make him the head of FBI. And listen what this man do.
Story and move on. A lot of us have creative ideas that never see the light of day because we feel like fancy equipment, a studio, and production crew is what makes a creator. But what if I told you that all you needed was your creativity? Well, today's sponsor NVIDIA. Then you type in the idea that you friction and puts benign, with very little else left to expose. Some way into the discussion, Elon Musk randomly dropped a bomb live on X. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they haven't been made public. Joe Rogan reads this tweet out loud, and the camera captures Patel's face as he realizes he's trapped. His response?
But I'm just staying out of the Trump Elon thing. That's way outside my line.
Says the literal director of the FBI who was conducting their investigation into Epstein. Kash Patel has shared a lot about Mr. Jeffrey before, though not in the way you'd expect for an FBI employee, let alone the director of the entire agency. Just 2 years earlier, he was publicly demanding for the client list to be released.
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list?
He's even been on a bunch of Q podcasts with over 50 appearances, stating things like Q has been right about so many things. One of his books is literally titled Government Gangsters, The Deep State, the Truth, and the Battle for Our...
And for all my people in the conspiracy world, like myself sometimes, Q is basically the QAnon thing, just look it up, Them people, them lost it, them mind, is craziness. It's a bunch of craziness. But that's just to show you the type of world where him come from with all the conspiracy and all of the stuff with him and fall. So let's look it up. QAnon. It was a crazy group of people. But believing there's some wild thing about the government.
Democracy, which explores FBI corruption, before becoming to shut down and reopen it as a museum of the deep state. But after he got the job as the head of the FBI, he clearly morphed into a completely different person. In one hearing, he said, "I have publicly rejected outright Q-baseless conspiracy theories." All in all, then, it would be fair to say he's hard to trust, and his discomfort on Joe Rogan is obvious. He's constantly looking away, fidgeting, and struggling with eye contact. He discusses his pre-FBI days as a lawyer, where he says he defended child traffickers.
This is what we call a war of experts. And I used to do it all the time. I mean, I represented some of the worst humans that you can possibly imagine on earth. Literally, the guys that were trafficking children from Mexico into America.
Think about that. While talking down the accusations, he casually mentions defending some of the worst people in the world to support his point. This guy went from demanding transparency to shielding it when given the power to provide it. The FBI Epstein investigations recently concluded, with the Bureau stating that investigators found no incriminating client list or any credible evidence that anyone was blackmailed. There are no plans to charge anyone else involved in the case, and everyone knows how bad this really is, and how much deceit is really going on behind the scenes. It's just so obvious that it's...
So, if anyone I am following the news right now, I want to know what one with the Trump administration, everybody, the head of the DOJ, that's the Department of Justice, all of them people here, before them get power, all of them were talking about releasing the file, all of them are talking about everything around Epstein, like getting the information out. They want them to do that. Now all of a sudden, everybody are telling the people, American people, hey, just forget about it. Don't worry about it. It was all nonsense. We don't have no such thing as a file. We don't have nothing. Understand? So not just Capital, what's your name? I forgot. The person at the DOJ, even Trump himself. We all know why I'm no one upon it. But yeah, that's here and there, but let's go.
It's almost impossible to ignore. And notice how they say incriminating list, which doesn't necessarily exclude the existence of any list whatsoever. This aligns with the expectations Kash Patel laid out in that podcast. The official line was dictated to Joe Rogan before being released to the public. But Kash Patel is certainly not alone among current and former intelligence officers who have had tense and weird exchanges on Joe Rogan, though some are arguably more discreet and hard to discover. But among the so-called glowies, a term used to describe government agents to make public appearances to shape narratives in some way, Mike Baker is probably the most interesting candidate to appear.
Him, right, Esther? He was even just on it recently, and it's like, that brother, yeah, former CIA agent, right? Him also have some intelligence agency or some security agency in one right now. Same retire, but you don't see an idea. And so this man, if you ever, I listen to this man talk for 3 hours, and this man is him have a skill there where him tell you something but not tell you something. And you know, you understand what I mean? Like him say a lot of words, but him not really tell you nothing. So yeah, so y'all gonna hear what same thing with his. Just listen what this guy say, cause that's my the way him describe Mike Kessler is just what I always say whenever I'm listening. I've been on the podcast several times, and it's like him says stuff, but not really says stuff. Like him say a lot of words, and it's like, all right, so what's your point? What you try to say? You know what I mean? Yeah, him kind of deceptive. So I kind of agree. Like sometimes them people here, somebody like him, he come on, like I said, you know, and he might try. Him still, you know, to me, shape the narrative of whatever's going on. You know what I mean? Even with this Epstein thing, him and that tried shape the narrative. Like whatever is going on with the government, whatever narrative them want to pull. But to me, I agree with you with some stuff. But yeah, you know, whatever. Well, we shouldn't have did this. We shouldn't have done that. But you know, whatever. But you know, I'm sure this guy gonna go in details about that as well.
Here on Joe Rogan. He's a former CIA officer who has become a Fox News contributor, appearing on Joe Rogan's podcast approximately 20 times. But calling him former CIA might be generous, as they say there's no such thing as an ex-CIA officer. Baker doesn't exactly lie to Joe Rogan's audience, but instead he runs what intelligence professionals call limited hangouts, revealing partial truths to establish credibility while concealing deeper secrets. I mean, listen to how he does it here, passing off accusations of CIA interference in overseas politics.
Of course, that's what we're doing, right? Of course, we're trying to influence hearts and minds. Of course, we're infiltrating organizations to try to influence the direction of the government.
Or this classic where he confesses to
same thing the CIA did in Jamaica back in them days there with Manley and Seaga. And I mean, if you don't know, that was, you know, there's not even a conspiracy. You know, we know it's all documented. The files and everything been released. You know, things like that has been documented, where, you know, the CIA did influence the election back in the day. You know, some people still say CIA have something with Bob Marley dying, but, you know, that's a whole other conspiracy. But, you know, but the thing is, the stuff that you find out now about, because I think the law was passed after a couple of years, them have to release certain files. I don't know if it's 50 years or something like that. Certain files after release, even though sometimes they release it kind of doctored, or, you know, them kind of take out certain stuff. But, you know, but when you see like certain files released from back in the day, you know, surprisingly, a lot of John F. Kennedy stuff they haven't released. You know, what's going on there. But you will see information like, you know, about like the Gulf War, like certain CIA tactics where they try to do, you know, with them, or actually even, you know, America got involved in the Vietnam War was basically was a made up lie in college. You know, say I saw a ship was attacked, but nothing like that. But you know, the media landscape was different then, right? Where they pretty much control everything. Where now, you know, there's a lot of information out there. It depends where you get it from, but you can say in today's day, you have a lot more different voices from a lot more different corner where you can get general information from, you know, you know, you still have to be careful, but I would say you have more independent voices now than back in the day. Pretty much everybody I get the information from, you know, the same news source. And typically people believe what them say, right?
the stealing state secrets.
It's like John Brennan, who was a director at the agency, talked about the business of the CIA. He says, we don't steal secrets. God damn it, of course we steal secrets. That's the point of the exercise, right?
The technique here is admitting to controversial CIA activities while framing them as obvious and necessary. He simultaneously satisfies truth seekers while completely normalizing the entire enterprise. He takes the sting out of revelations by acting like everyone already knows. Of course we overthrow governments, of course we steal state secrets. What did you expect to hear? But Baker isn't just some retired spook doing podcasts for fun. He's still very much in the game. As the CEO of Diligence LLC, an alleged CIA front company, he sits on the board of Newbridge Strategies connected to the Bush administration, and his company has ties to former CIA Director William Webster. That's why people in Joe Rogan's audience always notice that whenever he's on, he'll just speak so vaguely, in generalities, deflecting specific questions and always having a reason why he can't go into details. He comes across as down-to-earth enough to seem relatable, and he's skilled enough to reveal partial truths while protecting the deeper, darker secrets. When foreign policy gets messy, Baker appears to put the reasonable CIA perspective out in the public sphere. And with so many visits on the Joe Rogan podcast, he takes every opportunity he can. I mean, isn't it weird that he's been on over 20 times at this point? And that phrase glowies comes from the idea that federal agents and intelligence operatives glow in the dark, literally. They're obvious once you know what to look for, and Baker practically has a neon sign above his head to Joe's audience. David Gersh is another former military guest on Joe Rogan, and his credentials are comprehensive with 14 years of experience in military intelligence.
I did listen the entire episode with David Gersh, and if people, basically he's the guy that came out in recent time, I think either late last year or earlier this year, I forgot, when he said like basically the US have alien and craft, right? The thing with him, why it was a big thing was that, and he actually testified in front of the Senate on the oath. And the big thing is that which I'm sure Moon gonna go through here, is that this man have all of the credentials. This man have all the credentials they can think. Top secret clearance. So it's just when somebody like him says some stuff like that, it's like, you have to wonder if it's true. People, if you know me, I want to believe it's true. So, because, me believe like, we do have, to me, it makes sense. You have some life out there. If they've never been here before, that's the part I don't know. But basically, you're going to hear. So if you don't know much about David Gersh, I would advise you, just look him up. Him testify in front of the Senate. Some explosive thing about alien and craft, and US might have even a body and all of that stuff. US have a retrieval program, crash retrieval program and all of that stuff. So it's very interesting and is out there.
Intelligence, including positions at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. He was tasked by Congress to investigate UAPs for the Pentagon, so when he comes forward as a whistleblower, people listen. On Joe Rogan, David talks about retrieving what he called non-human origin technical vehicles, meaning spacecraft, and claimed the US government has been running crash retrieval programs for decades.
So it's like, once you realize the phenomenon's real, then you realize we've recovered artifacts and, biologics, or, dead pilots, if you will, even though it's, kind of creepy to even think about that in your worldview.
That sounds wild, right?
You don't think they were ever, alive sometimes too, right? And I'll leave it at that.
He talked about alien technology and recovering biologics, essentially dead alien pilots from these craft. He said there's been a sophisticated disinformation campaign to hide all of this, and that we're in a Cold War with other nations to reverse engineer alien tech. It was wild stuff, and David is making these claims under oath to Congress, which lends him huge credibility that most UFO witnesses lack. However, it also raises questions: why now? Why is a military intelligence officer suddenly revealing all of these alien details? This all comes at a time when UFO fans and skeptics alike are discussing how the US government could be covering up experimental weaponry programs. After spending 3 hours with him, Joe himself later suggested the guy might be a useful idiot, being fed information to serve a larger agenda, like high-tech drone programs.
And if you know anything about the US government and them, they do that, where people seems to have all of this credibility, and them feed them information, which somebody like him can, in their own spaces where him can get information, and it appears to be true and good information, right? But You know, I them say a useful idiot, somebody where you give the information or you know I'll go there and say stuff, even though it's wrong information. I don't think you remember. I think earlier this year when we have like the whole issue of up in New York, New Jersey with the quote unquote drone that they couldn't see and now met no eyes in the skies for hours. Or some people here report, which was the phenomenon all over the country was having this thing. And, you know, in my opinion, I think these things are just the US government experiment with different programs and stuff. And, you know, you will see, it's like when they learn American history, this is nothing. This is like the same playbook they did from all these years ago, from the 60s, the 50s, all of that stuff, when it comes to this type of thing.
How do you know whether or not they're just using him as a useful idiot to just get out some silly story because they're covering up for the fact that there's some very advanced drone system that the United States government has they're trying to keep under wraps?
Right.
Joe does, however, hint that it could be both things. UFOs exist, but the US is also using them to cover up advanced US technology. One thing is for sure, that people like David confuse people, which can benefit the government in itself. There's plenty of history that makes using UFOs to cover for military operations feel plausible too. A recent Department of Defense review found that in the 1980s, an Air Force colonel visited a bar near Area 51 and allegedly gave the owner fake photos of flying saucers, sparking UFO rumors around the already secretive military base. And the goal was to cover up the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. Many weren't happy with David being dismissed as a charlatan or part of a government-led UFO psyop, rather than an honest whistleblower. But something doesn't quite add up. Either he's revealing too much or not enough, or the timing is suspiciously convenient. Another guest, Dr. Zahi Hawass, was the total opposite of David. He came on Joe Rogan and somehow managed to make ancient Egypt, one of the most fascinating civilizations in history, sound completely dull. The Doctor is Egypt's...
People like him, and I did listen to this episode, people like him, we're not calling it, how to put it. You know, you have some people who, true, because they were there at the forefront of whatever they learned, they have this attitude and arrogance about them where it's a turn off and like everything them say, I just saw it go. Sometimes without no evidence. And, you know, it was hard to listen to him. You know, one, the accent thing and then the arrogance he may have on that episode. You like, you know, even Joey tried challenge him something about the pyramid. Because this guy basically in control access to every pyramid in Egypt. In control the whole of that information. If any documentary want to get done, anything about that, in control all of that. Right, many books about it. So basically, what him basically say, whatever him say about the pyramid is just what it is. And him not like take no new or any new challenging idea when people say, hey, them discover some things. They just like, you know, you have other archaeologists who was challenging, like them. I said, the pyramid is much older than what they state it is, but, you know, based on new information given or whatever it is, like, you know, like I think in Turkey they discover some ancient structure on the earth. Even recently, I forgot, I was seeing on YouTube another place where they discover some crazy structure, like it's under the earth, like, but it's like a civilization used to live there, and it's like, you know, which them dated older than the pyramid. But there's somebody like him not even want to take them stuff into consideration. But, you know, I'm sure they get into it here.
Former Minister of Antiquities, essentially the person responsible for overseeing access to all the pyramids, tombs, and archaeological sites. He's been the face of Egyptian archaeology for decades, appearing in countless National Geographic documentaries with a signature Indiana Jones hat. The secret of Egypt and the mysterious origins have become a massive talking point, especially popularized by Graham Hancock. So you'd think he'd be the perfect guest for entertaining some theories, and especially rebuttaling all of Graham Hancock's theories that have become mainstream on Netflix.
See, I'm a fan of Grant Hancock as well. You know, some people call him controversial. But you know, like you think about me, people. I like to listen to people in long form and have them discuss them point. I don't judge people based off of any clip, anything like that. You know, I'm not one of those because the thing is, sometimes when you listen to people in context, it makes sense, and then sometimes I listen to you, they say, okay, I understand why people feel that way. But for me personally, I don't judge people based off of any click. So someone like John Hancock is a very smart guy, and him does have some out there thinking. But you see, me, I like people like that who think outside the box anyway. And you know, John Hancock spend a lot of money, write a lot of books, just challenging other ideas, and so that him make even some discovery himself will challenge some of the ancient foundation, the ancient structure of Earth, because them find like large mass civilization, like structures that are older than the pyramid that are underneath the Earth, and you know, and them I try to investigate why, you know, was it because of the Great Destruction? Basically, his point is that there was great civilization prior to before us, basically. Civilization as that build magnificent and great structure, and some didn't survive. You know, in modern day time, like the pyramid. Some of it is like underneath the ground. You know, so him challenge the whole archaeology kind of narrative in some stuff, and you know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but you know, I like people who challenge and think outside the box, and you know, Grant Hancock does that. So I will check out him have a show on Netflix where he talk about this stuff.
Pyramids might be older than traditionally thought, the doctor shuts it down immediately.
What do you think the arguments are that predate that try to push the date back of the construction of the pyramids?
I never heard of this.
You've never heard of this
No,
before?
it's only new. It's a theories
Right,
from the new age.
But I saw a
no.
debate with
Yeah.
you. I saw a debate with you and Graham Hancock, and there was
So I'm
another
telling you,
archaeologist.
this guy?
But hold on. The other archaeologist was saying, if you're saying that something happened 10,000 years ago, where's the evidence of any civilization from 10,000 years ago?
Exactly.
But then you found Göbekli Tepe. So Göbekli Tepe was buried over 11. What is not true?
It never happened.
Tepe?
We never discovered this at all.
Wait a minute. Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey. But this was the evidence. Hold on.
No,
this is the
Is
evidence
it
in the
what I'm talking
argument. The argument was there was no evidence of an ancient civilization from 10,000 plus years ago. This is more than 11,000 years ago. That changes everything. Because now we know. Yes, it does.
That's
Because now,
for
hold
what?
on. Because now we know there was an advanced civilization capable of a spectacular construction 11,000 plus years ago.
Look at the archaeologists. They never talk about old civilization.
That's not true. Göbekli Tepe is universally accepted as being more than 11,000 years old.
I am talking now about Egypt. I'm not.
No,
going
I
to
understand,
another
but the
civilization.
argument was that there was never any ancient civilization capable of spectacular construction 10,000 years.
The same attitude and the arrogance, like him not even want to challenge the argument. You get what I'm saying? Him just want overpass. I'm glad even Joe Writer didn't even let him get away with that. You get what I'm saying?
Years ago.
When Joe mentions satellite imagery showing potential hidden chambers, he just calls it bullshit.
I investigated this. I took these techniques that they used and I gave it to expertise. And they said, these techniques cannot show underneath a solid rock
but these scientists are saying they can. Do you know about the Osiris shaft? How they've got
I
scanned?
discovered it.
You did, right?
Yes.
But do you know that they use this tomographic
No,
radar?
no, I am the one who found it. This is not.
No, I understand you found it.
His favorite response to any question was essentially, because I investigated it and I found it's wrong. When pressed for details, his response returns as, the answer is in my book.
I will tell you.
You will tell me how it was built?
Of course.
Okay.
Yo, episode I know Joe was trying to keep him cool. Because if you know anything about Joe Rogan, them type of thing excite him too. So I know when him know this money, I does some bullshit. I know him I try all him cool.
How do you know?
How do you know?
How do you know?
I found all the evidence of building the pyramid. We published a book, 1,000 pages. This book is the Bible of the pyramids of Giza Plateau.
Throughout this conversation, you can hear the frustration building. Every question was parried or deflected with something like, I figured out everything interesting about Egypt. The irony is that he's supposed to be this great communicator, but he comes across as the kind of academic gatekeeper that ancient history skeptics love to hate, and constantly just trying to sell his own book. Whether intentionally or not, he reinforced every stereotype about mainstream archaeology being closed-minded and dismissive.
Most of the information that's written on pyramids are wrong.
Most of it?
Most of it.
In archaeology books?
In archaeology books.
Really?
Except me and Mark Leaner.
You guys are the only ones that have it right?
Because have been working in Giza for the last 57 years of my life. I excavated every bit of sand.
And Joe Rogan later referred to this podcast as the worst one he ever did.
Was this the pad that Zahi was using right here? This one?
Maybe. That might have been the worst podcast I've ever done, but maybe a good one too. Just to see, okay, this is the guy, this is this closed-minded fellow that's been in charge of gatekeeping all the knowledge about
And
Egypt.
still standing on the same ideas.
Another Joe Rogan guest with seemingly compromised opinions was Adam Conover from the show Adam Ruins Everything. This one's striking because he built his whole career on questioning things and debunking myths.
This guy, man, yo, I enjoy watching him show. When he had that show, Adam Question Everything, I used to bench watch his episode them back in the day when it came out, and him kind of ruined his career and his reputation. But and somebody once you learn more, so you understand some of the things that was doing that in that show was just bum. There's a lot of BS, but I did enjoy the show when it was going on.
Now, to add a little context, his character ruins popular in the process, so you'd think he'd be comfortable with someone pushing back on his ideas. But when Joe starts asking some basic controversial questions, Adam seems genuinely surprised, as if he wasn't accustomed to anyone ever disagreeing with him. They eventually get into the infamous discussion about sports and gender, and Adam makes the argument that men only dominate sports because men invented the sports. So Joe asks why basketball was designed for men specifically.
So many of the sports were designed for male bodies, right? They're optimized for male bodies. Right, basketball, for example, right? How
is that optimized for male?
Basket, the way that the ball moves around, if
the ball moves around.
If we're gonna say that,
he even seems to realize how he sounds because he starts laughing right after saying it. The whole conversation had this narratives, and when Joe would press for details or ask for evidence, Adam would often say that he wasn't an expert. It would seem like he was almost forced into having these opinions, knowing how ridiculous they really were. The discussion about trans athletes was where this really showed. Joe laid out a detailed argument about biological advantages, 30 years of testosterone affecting bone density, tendon strength, the mechanics.
So my thing with this discussion, because it's basically ongoing, and my opinion is people have a right to live them life how they want. I'm not for judge people in life, but if you're gonna say woman and man have no difference, And if you want to narrow down to this specific thing when it comes to sports, physical advantage man have, like, to me, you live in a Lulu land at that point. Because it's like, this is biology, it's facts, isn't it, man? You know, and one off is not, you know, you might find a woman where be one off, but the average situation is most men are physically stronger than women. That's just what it is. No hormone, none of that stuff can change that, you know, and just as the average. So having physical sport, you know, maybe other sports, if it's not a physical sport, different, but they talk physical sports. Yes, man always have an advantage over women. And this is a fact. This is just what it is. You know what I mean? This is no bias or anything. That's just what it is.
Mechanical advantages of male hip structures versus female ones. But Adam's response was always just flat out disagreement.
This is a conversation. This is something I'd love to talk about on our show. And I'd specifically love, you know, this is the kind of topic where I really want to make sure that I know the research and that I'm, you know, also speaking to trans folks, you know, in this conversation. But
throughout the conversation, he kept name dropping his trans friends like he was calling in reinforcements, as though he was forced into giving this narrative. After the podcast, Adam immediately went on Hassan Piker's stream and complained that Joe,
he turned it
conveying his own opinions well. Adam Conover represents this whole class of supposedly independent intellectuals who've really just been captured by academic orthodoxy and forced into morally virtuous. He presents as someone who questions everything, but he really only questions things outside his own ideological bubble. When those core beliefs are challenged, he falls back on appeals to authority and identity politics. Many others on Joe Rogan have been out of the covering for political or institutional agendas, and one of the most infamous being Dr. Sanjay Gupta, a chief medical correspondent from CNN. We've brought up this before.
Yeah, I did listen to that episode
where Joe
too.
brings up how CNN had described his COVID medication as horse dewormer, when he'd actually gotten human ivermectin prescribed by a doctor. Thousands of
I'm telling you this. 2020 was an interesting time, right? Interesting year. Because of everything that happened, right? But I would tell you that here, learning what happened and learning how the media reacted and learning all the stuff that this is coming out with Dr. Fauci, I know they were lying. I would say that I would tell you maybe one of the most thing that influence it did have an influence on me. It have an influence on me now on like politically the media. Like I said, I'm always a skeptical person of the media, skeptical person of politics and politician and all of that. But it's like that just kind of just confirmed everything for me. You get what I'm saying? Because during the time I gave basically the government, Fauci, the benefit of the doubt. They don't know what's going on. Things changing rapidly. You know, so yeah, everybody I try to play catch up, you know, things change. You know what I mean? We get it. But to learn after the fact that all the stuff for them tell us was BS and them knew different and them never do anything different. There's no way nobody right now in them right mind if you trust anything the government tell you. It doesn't matter if a Republican or a Democratic in power. Them are lying and it's just control. The way the media reacted, the lie the media tell us, the fact that, you know, people say it come from this lab and everybody act like it didn't come from the lab. You know, now all of a sudden you can say it came from the lab. And you get what I'm saying? It's like they knew all of this. Even Fauci, to me, that man didn't even got jail. Because all of them, and they say, because the problem is we learn that the gain of function research was funded by the U.S. government or the NHS or whatever they call it. And so being technical, they're the fault because, Obama shut it down when he was in power. When Trump came back in power, they run up that stuff again. So, so the thing is, because Obama know that was some BS, the gain of function research, basically what them do, them in just in a simple form, them take these diseases and kind of amplify them to mature or to not mature, to mutate, where they can affect human more, the body and all of that stuff. So it was like a weird type of research, right? And the U.S. government funded that, and so all of that happened, and they knew what it was, even when it was happening, and then gaslight the people, the population, like them are the ones going on push the vaccine and all of that stuff. So yeah, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all of them was part of it, because them create this alarm. And the more you learn about them stuff here today, you realize, the media play all of us. You realize, the government play all of us. So it's like when me and people are arguing over Republican, Democrat, can I believe everything them read without no form of constructive criticism, no form of objective thinking. It's like, come on. Them but yeah, stop ranting.
Shot, as they did by editing his recovery video. So Joe asked directly,
I don't.
Dude,
what did they say?
They lied
What did
and
they
said
say?
I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
They
with
shouldn't have said it was horse.
bunch. Did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before.
But they
coming
did
on
it
your
with
podcast.
such glee.
No,
Yes,
Joe.
they did. I watched.
his network lied about Joe's medication. And you would think that would be a pretty big deal, right? Well, the very next night, Don Lemon was on CNN defending the horse dewormer characterization.
Ivermectin
might not want to lose credibility.
is commonly used as a horse dewormer. So it is not a lie to say that the drug is used as a horse dewormer.
Which is a classic institutional gaslighting tool. Technically true, but completely missing the point. Then there was Dr. Michael Osterholm, who joined in March 2020 with remarkably accurate predictions about COVID.
And just illness. In fact, I brought some numbers. We conservatively estimate that this could...
And yeah, him I did listen to I think I talked about it in one of our podcast episodes around that time. Talk about his appearance and the stuff that he discussed.
Require 48 million hospitalizations, 96 million cases actually occurring, over 480,000 deaths that can occur over the next 3 to 7 months with this situation. So this is not one that to take lightly.
And he was largely right. The US hit around 400,000 deaths by January 2021. The conversation was interesting because of how specific his insights were. He'd written a chapter about China being the source of the next pandemic, and when Joe asked about it, the doctor said he picked it specifically because he expected it to come from there.
China's been a bacterial and viral soup vessel for a long time. That's again why we have to protect ourselves here, because a bug anywhere in the world today can be a bug everywhere tomorrow.
His organization has been partnering with Homeland Security since 2003. His book Deadliest Enemy came out in 2017, 3 years before COVID. This was back when Joe was still very much pro-establishment on vaccines at the time of Osterholm's first appearance, making many arguments that resonated and sounded reasonable at the time. When he returned to the show in February 2022, the dynamic was then completely different. Joe was now a COVID skeptic, and this was evident in the conversation.
That it seems like this is coming from a lab, and these were credible people from legitimate universities. And then you had some other people that were trying to say, we need to disparage these people and we need to look at them as if they're fringe conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, I think in the early days that happened in a way
Why would that happen?
I can't comment. I wasn't part of that discussion. I did not get involved with that discussion because
With Osterholm remaining consistent despite Joe probing the pandemic from a more skeptical perspective. But it's these strange and controversial moments that have really helped make Joe Rogan so culturally legendary, where ideas are truly stress tested. As within 3 hours, you can start to really pick up if you're observing if someone truly has a hidden agenda.
So yes, that was a very interesting watch. I mean, I think, I think, and I think Joe have way more that interesting guests, but I think this guy did a pretty good job putting those together, and I mean, like I said, 2020 was one of those transformative time for me, when it come political or just being a natural skeptic, but I would say I maybe was in the boat with Joe at that point where I was somewhat, pro medical institute vaccine and all of that. And then now I'm like, I still trust because there's a lot of good app that's done through the year, but I'm still somewhat skeptical when it comes. It's like when you learn all this stuff them like the vaccine company them the pharmaceutical company them do, when you learn, them can't get sued for any malpractice, no injury, all of that stuff. It's like when you hear a lot of stuff, you just change your views and a lot of, if you're an objective person, it does put that level of, it's not wonder about everything. But yeah, with that said, people, that's it for me. It was a long video, 20 something minutes but it took us a while. So, you understand, we'll come up with some more episode in the cover. There's a discussion about a thing we want to talk about. It's another video. And them but I'm wait till Carter come in and me and him can have that discussion. They put our 2 cents on it. It might be a little longer video, but I think it's be good. It would be a good conversation. All right. But anyway, thank you. Have a good night. Peace.